A group of anti-mask Trump supporters were filmed in a viral video parading around a Florida Target, yelling at people to take off their masks. Watch.
Take your mask off!
Yeah, take it off!
You
idiot.
We're not doing it! Take off your mask! Take it off! Take it off! Take it off! We're not stopping it! Yeah, we got someone! Take it off!
Look at these kids! Let me make an example!
Just in case you didn't need a reminder that at least a third of the country seems to want to kill the other 2/3, there it is. There it is. Look, here we go again, right, with the anti-maskers. Look, I could go so far as to say, okay, if you don't want to wear a mask, then that's fine. Whatever, right? Yes, you're going to hurt yourself. Yes, you're going to hurt your family. I really don't have to care about you and what you do in your personal life, so long as you don't hurt anybody else. And that's the thing. That's where these people draw the line. Or I should say cross the line. Because they have went into a Target and started screaming at people to take off their masks while not wearing masks, therefore possibly turning that store into ground zero for a new COVID-19 basically breakout infection, right? And so that's the thing. You know, I really wish that level of energy that they used right there was put into something useful. They could help the homeless. They could protest police brutality. And that's, of course, if they believed it existed. Instead, they're going out of their way to spread the virus, but also encourage everyone else to do so as well. And in case you think, oh, no, it's fine, only 6% of people die from COVID, it was actually something else that killed them. Did you know that? Yeah, only 6%. Only 6%. They love that number. But, of course, it's misinterpretation of the study. In fact, COVID is actually more deadly when it comes to people with comorbidities. Millions of Americans have them. I think at some point, I read that about half of all Americans have some sort of comorbidity. And so these things make the virus more deadly. If you have diabetes, if you have had cancer, if you've had any sort of autoimmune disorder, anything like that, that makes the virus more deadly. But we also don't talk about what it does to so-called healthy people who end up getting it as well, because not everybody fully recovers. In fact, look, there's a lot of study that needs to be done about this, but so far the evidence of that people who recover from COVID-19 are often left with some comorbidities, if you will. Weakened immune systems, for example, which makes them, of course, vulnerable to more infections, like pneumonia, which is not good for somebody who just got over COVID-19 or could be reinfected with COVID-19. Not only that, but people with more severe infections might experience long-term damage when it comes to their lungs, their heart, their immune system, the brain, elsewhere. Anything that has that special receptor, I think it's A23 receptor, that this virus tends to target, which is in a lot of places in the human body. The virus can also have the opposite effect on the immune system. Instead of weakening it, it can cause parts of the immune system to become overactive and trigger harmful inflammation throughout the body, which again can damage your organs, specifically your heart, and that does not get repaired. Now, there are less deadly but pretty disastrous effects as well. According to certain studies, an increasing number of people have reported crippling exhaustion and malaise after, quote-unquote, recovering from the virus. One study of 143 people with COVID-19 discharged from a hospital in Rome found that 53% had reported fatigue and 43% had shortness of breath, an average of 2 months after their symptoms started. So that makes it very difficult to, of course, get back to work. It makes it very difficult for people to go and exercise again. And not only that, but a study of patients in China showed that 25% had abnormal lung function after 3 months, and that 16% were still fatigued. And so they show signs of what is known as chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, one person who's an infectious disease researcher at the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine in the UK, a man named Paul Garner, experienced this firsthand. He explains his initial symptoms as being mild, right? But has since experienced what he called a roller coaster of ill health. Extreme emotion, it can cause depression, and utter exhaustion, mind fog, and a new symptom seemed to have cropped up every single day, ranging from breathlessness to arthritis in his hands. This virus, not a joke, right? It's not a joke. And studies have shown that wearing masks is probably the easiest and best thing a person can do to protect not only themselves, but others as well. Unfortunately, in America, people are not only not doing it, but they're reveling in the fact that they're not doing it because they've turned it into a political issue. That, it basically, the less you wear a mask around, the more fervent your Trump support is. And that's what it's unfortunately turned into. And for Trump supporters, wearing a mask makes you some sort of Democrat, cheap Soros, loving Marxist socialist, communist end of the world, pedophile, all this horrible stuff, right? And it's just, it's really something to see. Just the absolute ignorance that's going on on the right when it comes to masks. So now, of course, the internet had a pretty strong response to this. People on social media. I want to read some of that. With Christy B saying, these people are the reason I can't go anywhere. I have an autoimmune disease, so I have to be extra careful through this pandemic. Because of others' ignorance, the way I live my life is being completely altered for the foreseeable future. This is what we're doing. We're just keeping people inside that have autoimmune disorders. Just so, your ass can go eat an Applebee's or go to a Target and not have to put on a mask for 2 fucking minutes. It's not like it's that hard. Liz Kirsch says, when I see somebody without a mask, my first thought is, that person doesn't care if I die. It's true. Quincy Claiborne points out, it's always white people. Yeah, I never really ever see an anti-masker who is a person of color. I'm sure some exist out there, but mostly it seems to be Trump-supporting white people. Real weird. Real weird. Ms. VHO says, I think that's the saddest part for me, the fact that they think it's funny. No empathy for all of us with compromised immune systems, the very lowest form of humanity. I agree with that. And then we also have, these people are why I don't go to Florida anymore. They're also the reason that none of us can go to the Bahamas anymore. So that's an interesting point because it's like, this is the reason why other countries won't let us in. I mean, I guess instead of having Mexico build a wall, or pay for a wall between us and Mexico and the rest of the world has seen our ignorance and decided to build a wall around us to keep us from going out. And that's what it basically is. We're pretty much banned from every other country when it comes to travel, thanks to COVID, thanks to Donald Trump, and thanks to these people. So congratulations. I guess that's what you really wanted, is to isolate yourself from the world. Well, there you go. We are the stupid country. Heather Houston says, I think a sizable portion of anti-maskers are motivated first and foremost by the perverse excitement they feel by knowingly endangering others and saying, I don't care about you. Your right to personal safety is not as important to me as my childish impulse to be contrarian. And look, I think she makes a good point. I definitely think that she makes a great point. There is a lot of, and I see this all the time, just this weird desire to quote unquote own the libs. Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. And then finally, something to point out here. Dean Gloucester says, how nice for the employees who are risking their health to keep it open for customers. And by the way, these employees are doing it at minimum wage. You know that the cost of not only getting tested for COVID, which I know the government claims that it's free. It's generally not, as we've seen lots of people get charged for testing, sometimes in $2,000 to $3,000. And not to mention if you have serious side effects, or I should say, if you get seriously ill, which is very, which is very possible with this virus, you can end up in the hospital and rack up hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. We're the only country where this happens, by the way. Every other country has universal health care, which is much, much cheaper than we have here in this country. In America, hundreds of thousands of dollars. You will literally go bankrupt if you get sick by, ironically, by people like this who will run up in a Target, without the masks, spread COVID all over the place. You get sick, and you're on the hook for hundreds of thousands of dollars if you're lucky enough to survive. And if you are, you end up with these long-term illnesses, long-term problems that will end up costing you more money in the long run. And again, we're the only country in the world that does this. It's funny. I didn't want to bring this up, but I've been pestered on my phone, right, by a health insurance salesman that is trying to sell me health insurance. I was like, you know what? I said, look, I'm not interested in that right now. Health insurance is too expensive. I think private insurance should be abolished, and we should all do Medicare for all. This a-hole responds to me back and says, well, how are you going to pay for it? I had some choice words, right? And I explained exactly how it is that we cannot afford our current system, and that we actually would save money if we had a Medicare for all single payer system. And of course, I'm pretty sure that person's never going to text me again. But it's that ignorance, It's the same ignorance that we see in a lot of these anti-maskers, and so it's just, again, it's total selfishness as well. I mean, look, they have a selfish ideology, and that ideology is conservatism, or what we call Trumpism, right? They don't. I mean, it must be nice to be a conservative because you don't have to give a shit about anybody. It must be pleasant, right? No wonder conservatives are happier overall than liberals. They don't care about other people, and they think, no, that's weak. Weakness is caring about other human beings and having empathy. And it's also why they can write off all the bad things happening in the world as either fake or, not my problem. It doesn't affect me personally. And that's what it is. And as far as Trump supporters go, I think I've said this before, they're not a political movement. What they are is just a death cult.